Hi, welcome to Crime Time 911. So today we're talking about a mother who would do anything and everything to support her family and her children, just like most of us would, right? This case took place in Edmonton, Alberta in 2011. But before we get into the details of this case, I would really like to get to know Cindy a little bit better. So Cindy was a 36-year-old Indigenous woman. She had 3 beautiful daughters. She was part of a large Indigenous community. Everybody just loved her. Her family, her friends, anybody that basically knew her just had nothing bad to say about her at all. Her family described her as a joyful and loving spirit. As I said, Cindy lived in Edmonton, Alberta. So in order to support her family, like I said in the beginning, she would do anything and everything to support her 3 little girls. Cindy sometimes worked as a woman of the night. You know what kind of woman I'm talking about, right? So she would have to, go out, meet men, do her thing and, in order to make money. So one night in June of 2011, she headed over to the Yellowhead Inn where she met Bradley Barton. Bradley Barton was a truck driver from Ontario who had stopped at the Yellowhead Inn for a couple of days to sort of reset, I guess, is what he would be doing before he went back on the road. Barton and Cindy, somehow they crossed paths. Allegedly, he paid Cindy for her services. So there's not a lot of information on this case that I could find leading up to what had happened or even what took place during that night. So Cindy and Barton, they go up to his hotel room. They do what they need to do. Allegedly, she spent a couple of nights with him. And then on June 21st, 2011, someone, and again, it's not clear on who found her. I'm assuming it's somebody that works at the hotel, but somebody found her lifeless body in the bathtub of Barton's hotel room. There was no mistaking that this was an intentional act. There was no room for accidental causes here, or because of the manner in which her body was left. She sustained severe, and I can't even imagine what this would have been like while she was alive. But she sustained severe injuries to her private areas. So that poor girl, to me, again, this is my own opinion because there's not a lot of detail, but to me, that sounds like she was almost tortured for a couple of days. Like, to be so severely injured anywhere, let alone in your private areas, that would actually cause you to be, to bleed until you're no longer alive. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what she would have gone through. So because Cindy was found in Barton's hotel room, he became their one and only suspect. Obviously, unless he had somebody in there with him, he was the only one that could have inflicted those wounds or injuries on Cindy. So there was no question of who had done this. It was a matter of proving whether it was intentional or not intentional. So Barton was arrested and charged with first degree, which is completely understandable considering the nature in which her body was found. It makes sense. Like, nobody can, in my opinion, I don't think anybody could accidentally do something so severe to cause somebody to no longer be living. So he was arrested, and then the trial started in 2015. So from 2011 to 2015, I'm assuming that Barton was hopefully in jail this whole time because, somebody that can do something like that, it would be too scary to think about him actually being able to be loose during those few years until the trial had started. So hopefully, again, I couldn't find any information on whether or not he was in jail during that time, but hopefully he was. And at the trial, Barton testified. He wanted to let everybody know that everything that had happened between him and Cindy that night was completely 100% consensual acts. Now, I don't know anybody that would consent to being that severely tortured. The Crown argued that the injuries that Cindy had all over her body it couldn't have been consensual. It couldn't have been an accident. It had to be intentional. He had to have known exactly what he was doing, or that he was just simply being reckless, which I don't even know if being reckless I don't know if I would consider being reckless, an acceptable explanation, because even there's lots of people who are reckless, but not to the point where they unalive somebody. I don't think that there's any gray area. I think that he knew exactly what he was doing and that he did everything intentionally. Whether he, did this before in the past and never got caught, maybe he did other things and then this just eventually escalated. Again, I don't know the details, but that's typically how it works. People don't usually just unalive somebody right away. Usually it's like an escalated process where, they start little by, with animals or, mistreating or, essaying women or abusing women and that sort of thing before they actually get to the point of unaliving somebody. So I feel like he had a history of some sort of violence towards women. But I didn't research that. I didn't look into seeing if there was anything about that. Nothing came up while I was researching this particular case that there was any history of this. So if there was, I don't think that there was anything publicly announced, but that's my personal opinion on the matter. The Crown also argued that legally Cindy could not consent to the level of force that was used against her. So, and that makes sense. Like, I don't know anybody that would consent to be like tortured, basically. Like, there's no other word for it. So on March 15th, 2011, the jury actually found Barton not guilty of first degree and not guilty of manslaughter, if you can believe that. I literally had to reread that part and like cross-reference just to make sure I was reading that correctly, because it didn't make sense to me that somebody was accused of first degree. The state that Cindy's body was found in, like, I didn't think that there was any possible way that he couldn't at least have been found guilty of manslaughter. That didn't make any, it didn't make any sense to me. But it's true. I checked several resources. The jury did acquit him of all charges, which I wish that I had more details on what happened during the trial, because I'd really like to know what was presented and what was said in order to sway the jury in that manner. So with that verdict, the Crown filed an appeal to the Alberta Court of Appeals. So, which obviously I would expect them to, because it's a clear-cut case in my opinion. So the Alberta Court of Appeals reviewed the case, went through all the notes, documents, evidence, whatever. I don't know if there was any videotapes of the trial, but they went through everything that was presented to them on this trial to determine what happened and whether or not they should approve the appeal or if they should just let the acquittal stay as is. So the Alberta Court of Appeal found that the trial judge made some serious, and I mean serious, errors during the trial, especially around consent, essay laws, and the fact that Cindy performed certain acts in order to support her family. That last part shouldn't have been taken into consideration, because regardless of whether you're just an innocent person that met a guy that thought he was cute and decided to have a one-night stand with him, or you were kidnapped, or you were paid for your services, no woman, regardless of background, work history, deserves that. Not at all. So that definitely should not have even been emphasized during the trial. The Alberta court also found that the instructions that were provided to the jurors were legally incorrect. So I'm not really sure what that means. I'm guessing that whatever the rules are that the judge had given them were not correct. And again, it falls into the category of the stereotypes about Indigenous women, stereotypes about women of the night. And the trial also allowed myths to come through. So again, I don't know what that means, but clearly there was some serious issues with this trial. And I'm shocked that a trial judge would allow, well, maybe I'm not shocked because, after doing so many crime episodes, I'm finding a lot about the justice system that I really would have never have imagined would ever happen. So I guess I'm not shocked, but it's unbelievable that somebody within that power could potentially, use their own personal opinions about certain people and actually have a jury swayed to let a murderer go. When Barton lost at the Alberta Court of Appeal, he would escalate the appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada. So this is 2017 that the Alberta Court of Appeal agrees that the trial judge did not act appropriately. The evidence was not presented correctly. There was a lot of errors and a lot of questions around, legal ways of doing things within the court that attributed to why Barton was found not guilty or was acquitted of that first trial. So that's 2017. In 2019, the Supreme Court of Canada would agree with the Alberta court. So they agreed that this acquittal should have never have happened. So they upheld the decision to overturn the acquittal. And they ordered a new trial on manslaughter. So that is awesome. I really dislike the fact that Barton was out loose for that many years. But I am so glad to hear that the Supreme Court of Canada agreed that the first trial was not appropriate and that they needed to do a whole new trial, a correct trial, a legal trial. The new trial started in 2021. So we're 10 years after Cindy was found. And I'm assuming that Barton was free for at least 8 or so of those years, if not all 10 years. I don't have any words for that. Like, how can, he's gone out, the past 10 years, living his life, having a great old time, probably potentially, essaying other women or doing nasty things to other women. Just being free, while Cindy is no longer with us. Her 3 daughters are more than likely devastated that they've lost their mother. Cindy's family and community, I know, really rallied around and, supported each other. They really missed her. They really, were hurt to hear that she was, tortured in such a way and, no longer with them. So I find that very, very, it's so unfair. It really is. And it disgusts me that the legal system can be like that. But anyway, so the trial proceeded in 2021. They went through all the proper, channels. Everything that was presented in a legal way. There was no swaying the jury to say, because she was Indigenous, this, or because she, paid for certain or was paid to do certain services, that. It was just straight up, this is Cindy as a person. This is what Barton did to her. And that's it. And that's exactly how it should have been from the get-go. So at the end of that trial, he was convicted of manslaughter. So thank goodness he was convicted of manslaughter and he is in jail. So I'm so glad that he was found guilty eventually, even if it did take 10 years, because worst case scenario, he could have been acquitted again and still be free to this day. Let me know what you think of this case. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Thank you again for listening to Crime Time 911. Stay safe, stay curious, and remember to always trust your gut.